for $2 million, were you not?
Through the chairman to council, there is $2 million of OSIF funding going towards this project. You'll notice that is included in the report on...
I did see that, but
yes.
I'm asking...
We're not anticipating any additional funding from the province. That being said, if any funding opportunities ever present themselves, we're all over that. We'll take any money anyway we can find money to move the project forward.
Well, I guess, you know, reading all the infrastructure money the feds have put out, like if we're using this technology, which is relatively new, you say in Canada, would there be any chance that we could apply for any additional funding?
Through the chairman to council, as soon as we see a funding opportunity that anything is eligible for, we would absolutely be applying for that. We haven't seen anything any additional things at this point that it would be applicable for.
Well, I'm just going by, I realize this is provincial funding you're referring to here right now, correct? The $2 million?
That's correct.
And I thought I read someplace where the federal government put out infrastructure funding. I just wondered if this would apply, that's all.
Through the chairman to council, we have not at this point seen any funding opportunities that this would qualify for, but we never stop looking.
Okay, and if I may, my last question is through to James. I see we're going to debenture at $2 million here. Now, that will only take place at completion of the project? Or does that go ahead of time to help pay the bills?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Brunton, through Infrastructure Ontario and even the private sector, they will not issue debt unless the project is complete.
Thank you.
Okay, I think we better get our money fast from the Ford government. Wells? Yeah, Brunton seconded it. So, anything further? Okay, just let me quickly read it. It's received the report as information and that a bylaw be executed for the contract with the firm of Reed and Dial in the amount of $13,027,002.98, and that the approved 2018 capital budget be amended as outlined within the report. Those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. Okay, moving on to our next report, and with the iPad, I got to flip back and forth to find out which one that is. And it's, I guess that's you, Stephanie, and it's regarding the application for taxi cab ownership license, the City Taxi Brantford.
Thank you. Through the chair to committee, the report before you is a standard taxi cab business license application, and it's for City Taxi in Brantford. Mr. Kennedy is proposing to operate 2 to 3 non-accessible vehicles throughout Norfolk County, and he's looking at a 24/7 operation. The call center would be at the home base in Brantford, and they're looking at using an internet-based dispatch system. Mr. Kennedy is proposing to hire all local Norfolk County drivers for the company. Staff notified the taxi companies within Norfolk County that we currently have licensed, and as attachments to the staff report, we received 7 objections to this application. There are currently 9 companies licensed in Norfolk County and 35 vehicles that are licensed. If approval is given as standard within the bylaw, and that's the Harmonized Business Bylaw 2016-92, the company would have to follow the stipulations outlined for licensing purposes. Based on what's required within our licensing bylaw, we have no, or staff has no objection to the application, and we are recommending approval. And with that, we will answer questions.
And Mayor Luke.
Thank you, Chairman Black. Thank you, Ms. Godbey, for this report. Obviously, in the package, I counted 6 letters of objection. 6, 7, that's several. Through you to Stephanie. Steph, how do you determine the saturation point, since we do control how many taxi companies we want operating within our boundaries? Here we have one from Brant outside, and we have a lot of objection from current license holders and operators. How does your department determine saturation point?
Through the chair to Mayor Luke, at this point, our bylaw doesn't specify how many licenses we can have. That can be a further review. Staff could do, if council or committee is desirous of us, we could do a comprehensive review on that. There are municipalities that do stipulate within their bylaw the number of licenses that they would license within the municipality. We can look at that, but as it stands right now, our bylaw does not stipulate a cutoff point.
So the last question would be, maybe Stephanie can answer this, but certainly we're getting a request for a license from a taxi company, City Taxi in Brantford, to operate here. If one of our locally Norfolk-owned companies applied in, say, the city of Brantford, do you know if City of Brantford has anything in their bylaw that says we have a cap number or, so in other words, I'm just trying to determine if it's like when we put out our RFPs or our tenders, somebody from Toronto can bid on them and our local contractors / suppliers can bid on ones outside of the county. Do you know, or would it vary maybe from municipality to municipality?
Through the chair to Mayor Luke and committee, unfortunately, no, I don't have the answer. I would suspect that it would vary, but again, I don't have that answer. I can get it if committee so chooses.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Height.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple questions and they're more to deal with Ontario Works and ODSP. You'll see in two of these letters here from local cab companies, there's some strange wording in here. It says that some of our current licensed companies don't operate full taxi services, instead focus on the ODSP and Ontario Works medical appointments, which provide large paydays. And then on the 2 pages later on the one taxi, it says here again, taxi companies in Norfolk County run medical appointments for Ontario Works, ODSP, and school runs for Grand Erie, which provide additional income to our companies, but also take us away from providing local taxi services. Now, I know there was a number tossed around before, $500,000 that was costing us. Is that why we're having, like, I've never seen so many taxi cabs applying in Norfolk County. Is that why? There's $500,000 worth of business there, I know that, but I'm still hearing from people, you still have to wait an hour to get a cab.
Marlene?
So through the chair to committee, there is obviously monies in the discretionary funds for medical appointments for our OW and our ODSP clients. So it is utilized. We do have a list of licensed taxi drivers, then we do have a process to cycle through, so we don't pick one over the other. It is a very clear process that staff are aware of and that they follow. And prior to that, though, we do utilize Ride Norfolk as our first option, and we do look at every other option, and the taxi service is the last option that we explore.
Will we ever get a report that gives us those options, as in how many people actually ride on Ride Norfolk versus all of the free cab rides they're getting?
Through the chair to Councillor Height, we can definitely do that. We can pull a report on those services and bring it to council in an information memo if so desirous by committee.
Okay, because like one would think with Uber taking over so much of the business that you would see less. Instead, we're seeing more, so something doesn't seem right, but just my 2 cents.
Okay, did I see your hand, Councillor Wells?
Mr. Chair, and thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I will say I'm having difficulty with this report. I've read the report, and the reason that I'm having difficulty is, you know, every one of these taxi companies have suggested that we are already saturated with the number of taxi cabs. They are complaining about the fact that they are having a hard time existing, and yet we are going to put more pressure on them to exist. And I don't know. I think I don't want to be trying to protect our own, but I guess I am. I find that we should be, if we have 7 taxi cabs in Norfolk County, maybe that's enough. So I don't think I can possibly support this, Mr. Chair.
Put some sort of motion on to that effect?
I would put a motion on that we do not issue a license to this company.
Okay, let me ask the clerk, how would that be worded then?
Through the chair to Councillor Wells, our bylaw does state that if council decides to refuse an application, we just ask that we put in the wording that there's rationale as to the refusal. And so if you want to say because there's too many in the current market, or however you choose to word it, but I do ask that within the wording you include your rationale.
We've reached the saturation point? Sorry. All right, so CAO would like to speak to this issue?
Over the course of my career, I have had the pleasure of drawing a paycheck at municipalities that license body rub parlors, taxi cabs, and an assortment of other businesses. I can tell you there is a wide body of case, without getting a specific legal opinion, which I would of course decline to do in open session, I can tell you that generally speaking, there's a wide body of case law in the province of Ontario dealing with the instance when municipalities that license businesses put an upper limit on that number of businesses. It is something that is possible to do. However, when a municipality is going to limit competition, set a number, X, whatever X happens to be, it needs to have a valid purpose for so doing. The best way to have a valid, sorry, not a valid purpose, it needs evidence to support a position taken. At the moment, Norfolk County's bylaw establishes no upper limit because historically we haven't had so much demand for taxi cabs that that's ever been required. If this council is desirous, it could at some point in time instruct staff, or we could bring a budgetary amendment, but we'd need to do some sort of market-based study to determine sort of what the needs are before we wanted to consider putting in some sort of limitation to competition. Canada is a democracy, but it's also a capitalist society. And one of our underlying values is competition in the market. We have here an application. One of our other legal principles is we don't discriminate based on place of origin. We have a number of staff who don't live within our borders. We don't give them a hard time over that. We also employ people from other municipalities, and they employ from ours. It's a sort of a give and a take. So if council is desirous of limiting the number of cab license or determining what an appropriate number is, we can do that. But lacking that evidentiary basis, I would suggest that on the face of it, you have a report that says this application has met all of the evidentiary burden it's required to. We don't know what the competitive number is. Ultimately, the market should dictate that. It would appear there's at least one company that feels there's unmet demand. And ultimately, we'll see. Councillor Height's correct. Uber is very much a real thing. It exists here. The number will rise, the number will fall. I think we're getting these applications because our population is growing and our economy is ticking up. Our employment is up. There's more money in this community than there used to be. And I think others are recognizing that fact. And Norfolk County is a good place to do business. I think we should celebrate this. It's a wonderful problem to have and good on us. At any rate, if you do desire to limit, I think we need to do a market-based study. I could be wrong, and maybe there's someone on staff who's capable of doing that, but I suspect that's best done by a consultant. I'd offer you that advice. Thank you.
Just wondered, Mr. CAO, could this be deferred pending that report?
I wouldn't give specific legal advice in a public forum. I would say that when, think of the development permits we deal with, there's a certain set of rules when you apply. We change the rules halfway through. We don't move the goalposts. If we move the goalposts, those apply to future applications. We don't change the rules midstream. And that's a really good philosophy to live by so that everyone knows we're sort of fair dealing in our business practices.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Wells, back to you. Have you rethought this, or are you letting your motion stand?
Mr. Chair, and I did hear the county manager very clearly, and I appreciate that, Chief Executive Officer. However, I also read these letters that we have received, and they are saying that they are having a hard time staying in business. So to put new people in business, to put other people out of business, what are we gaining? So I guess I will not be supporting the motion that's on the floor, or the recommendation that's on the floor, but maybe what we should do is maybe ask staff to look at this and give us a report, not on this one, if that is what the county manager is suggesting. I don't want to get in trouble either. I mean, I want to do the right thing for the county, but maybe that's an issue that we should look at the next opportunity that staff has to look.
But you have proposed a motion, so.
I have.
And did I get a seconder for that? I'm not sure. Councillor Oliver, so there is a duly moved and seconded motion. So
I'll leave it on the floor.
it is on the floor. So, and it's open for discussion. Councillor Sonnenberg, then Oliver.
Thank you. I won't support it. We can't tell how many hairdressers we should allow to go into business, how many bars, how many car dealerships. This is a free enterprise society we live in. It's a competition, and may the best man survive. Unfortunately, that's the way it is. So I'm going to support the application for the extra taxi company.
Okay, you're not supporting the motion on the floor. Councillor Oliver?
Mr. Chairman, I am going to support the motion, and although I appreciate what the deputy clerk told us earlier, that we do need to have a rationale in the motion, and I think the rationale legitimately could be that in the opinion of council, the market is adequately serviced now by the operators that we have.
Okay, Councillor Brunton?
Greed is good, competition is good. Isn't that what they used to say in the movies? Let's
Okay.
go for it. I won't support the motion.
Okay, and anything further? Okay, would you like to hear the motion read again? Maybe Stephanie could read it?
Through the chair, I have that staff report CAO 1822 regarding application for taxi cab owner's license, City Taxi Brantford, be refused due to, in the opinion of council, the market is adequate.
Okay, those in favor of that motion? So that's 1, 2, 3, and those opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is defeated. What would you like to do, Mayor Lou?
I'm going to move that we adopt the recommendation in the report.
Okay, so moved. Seconder? Councillor Brunton, any further discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 in favor, those opposed? 1, 2, 3, and that's carried. Okay, thank you. And moving on to, I think it's Stephanie, you once again with the tow trucks?
Yeah.
Through the chair to committee, over the last year and a half, Norfolk County has made significant advances in our licensing, specifically to business licensing. And I've referenced in my last report, this harmonized business licensing bylaw is referred to as bylaw 2016-92. We are, for the period of introducing and educating the public on the harmonized business licensing that we have within the county, we figured we would take a, basically a piecemeal approach, and that we wouldn't enforce it all at once, we would slowly do it. So at this time, we were looking for licensing the tow trucks. Prior to this, we haven't really enforced it. We aren't seeking any additional resources to this regard, but what we are doing is recommending some amendments to that bylaw 2016-92, and specifically to the tow truck licensing schedule that will allow us to still derive the value from licensing in a manner that will be more easily to administer and enforce. These changes also reduce some of the red tape on the local tow truck industry. So in our discussion with an industry spokesperson, they are also in favor of this. Council Services sees a real need to have tow truck licensing in place, and it is a good manner to protect local consumers and also protect local businesses from external companies coming to Norfolk and providing services for at no fee. With the approved changes, we would expect to have the local 6 or 7 companies licensed within a few months, This would leave us with only 2 other areas of enforcement that we're currently not being too sticklers with, and that would be the auctions and the sale of secondhand goods, but we will be getting to that as well, again, through the piecemeal approach of the Harmonized Business and Licensing Bylaw. In each area of licensing levels, there are 50% of that they should be as well. We have very high adherence of the actual auctioneers and pawn shops are low. So when it comes to real estate auctions and non-charitable thrift stores or retail stores. And with that, I will answer any questions.
And questions of the report, Councillor Height first, and Mayor Luke second.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to the Deputy Clerk, how many tow truck companies do we have in Norfolk County?
Through the chair, I think 6. I don't have a specific, it's 6 or 7.
6 or 7. So you mentioned that the tow industry, it says here on page 120 at the top, it says here that they would like to have no business licensing.
Sorry, just one moment, please. Yeah, that is correct, but council adopted the Harmonized Business Licensing Bylaw in 2016, and this tow truck is a schedule of that Harmonized Business Licensing. So we do need to follow that direction of council through the bylaw. What we're proposing today is to amend the schedule so that we're just licensing the business of the tow truck business and not the drivers specifically.
Okay, and then when I jump down another paragraph, one of the problems that they're having is that this tow truck schedule is too comprehensive. And when I look in here, it is very onerous. Is there no way to trim it down? Like this is like, I don't know, for aircraft or something. Like the list is massive what they have to do. These are small companies, maybe 2 guys, 3, 4 people working for them, and they have to have a rate card, a list for the truck, contact information, like make all trucks available for inspection at the tow truck business operator's expense. Even like, yeah, no, I'm not liking that. That's extensive for these small companies. They would be out of business.
Through the chair, just to Councillor Height and to committee, again, this bylaw specifically was drafted, and when it was drafted in, I would say, mid-2015, and then approved and ratified by council in 2016. But when it was in the initial stages of the draft, we looked at various other municipalities and how they license and what the requirements they take in for these companies. When we came to the point now in wanting to move forward with the more strict enforcement of tow trucks and the licensing aspect of it, we noted, and we worked with, there was an industry spokesperson, and we noted that there are some maybe more onerous points within the restrictions, so licensing requirements. So that's why we are bringing the amendment here today. But to reiterate, this bylaw as it stands was approved by council.
But overall, they're not very happy with it.
Okay, you can always vote against it.
Will do.
Okay. Councillor Luke, or Mayor Luke.
Cheer up. Well, Mr. Chair, I just have a couple of questions for Stephanie, and certainly I don't disagree that the tow services businesses in Norfolk are on the verge perhaps here of having a change in business. Through you to Stephanie, I'm on the last page, it doesn't matter under the conclusion. If this is passed by this committee and council next week and then subsequently a bylaw put in place, what type of notice are we going to give our operators? Would it be something effective 1st of next year?
Through the chair to Mayor Luke and committee, our business licensing does run for the year period, so we would start to actively promote the licensing aspect of it, but likely would not be enforcing it actively until the new year.
Good. Mr. Chair, the other one is, I did the math a little bit under financial services comments. You're proposing a $114 annual owner's license, we'll call it that, to have my business viable in the county, and $67 for a tow truck driver. So basically, if I was an owner and had 3 operators, I would be in the $300 range per year. Would the tow truck owner of the business also have to obtain, besides $114, a $67 fee for he or she, the owner, in order to be an operator, or when they get their license, they can operate as well as run the business? I'm just curious.
Through the chair to Mayor Luke and committee, I will attempt to answer this. I didn't author this report, so I will attempt to answer it.
I'm really trying to stump you. I don't expect you to be able to answer it.
I guess so. So by removing this, if council passes what we're proposing, the amendment to the schedule, if council or committee passes that, then we're not requiring that individual driver's license anymore. So what we would just be requiring is just an overall license for the company itself, so that $114.
Okay, you didn't answer my question. No, that's okay. Through you to Stephanie, Mr. Chair. What is the real rationale? I'll be honest, I don't ever recall somebody giving me a complaint about a tow truck service, ever, in this county. I hear sometimes in the city they got you, and they can really put it to you. That's probably not a fair statement for some of the operators in the city. But what are we really trying to, with this bylaw, what are we really trying to control here? Or what are we trying to, because I note in here that if you have a complaint, this will now allow you to go to a bylaw appeals committee, and that's fair enough, but is there a real particular reason, or is this sort of just come down in general terms with what council decided to do with the user fee?
I'll ask the CAO to answer that.
Oh, okay, if you will.
I would ask council to consider that in this instance, your primary motivator is to act as a protector of the public good and the consumer.
Okay.
You're here in a consumer protection sort of mode.
That's good.
A number of our country's largest and most prestigious breweries and distilleries were once upon a time sort of smugglers and rum runners. A number of wonderful shipping chains long ago used to be pirates. And with tow truck companies, historically, although not true at the moment, I'm sure in Norfolk County, there was a high level of criminality and penetration by organized crime. Accordingly, this is an area that is regulated by municipalities, and you just put yourself in the footsteps in the place of someone who knows nothing about auto mechanics and whose car breaks down. In that transaction and relationship, he or she with the tow truck has a huge amount of power vis-a-vis the person stuck at the side of the road. And I understand that our local businesses are ethically operated, and we should celebrate that fact. But the reason why we have a high level of regulation in this industry is because of historical abuse. This has just become something that our bylaw is not wildly different than comparable bylaws. There's a structural reason for this, in the same way you regulate any number of professions, to have a way to address the bad apples. And we're not aware of any bad apples, but this is for consumer protection, because when a tow truck is needed, there is a huge power imbalance, and that's when and why you regulate.
And Mr. Chair, my very last question, I read through here in the schedule, which you've shown the revisions, that when a tow truck operator applies for a license, it is the tow truck operator or a business will submit the rates that they will, the rate fee, will not be set. It'll be the rate will be set under operators on page 124 of our agenda. They will submit a list of the rates for tow truck services that includes but is not limited setting out the rates for towing, boosting. So there will be different operators with different rates, correct? And then the market will look after who gets the business and who has to adjust. Thank you.
Okay, so what would we like to do with this? There is a staff recommendation. Anybody interested in putting that on the floor? Mayor Luke? And seconded by Councillor Sonnenberg. Is there any further discussion, questions, comments? And Councillor Height.
Just one comment, it says here, the operators, you must submit a list of rates for tow truck services that include but is not limited to the setting out the rates for towing, boosting a battery, changing a tire, opening a locked vehicle, righting a vehicle, and if applicable, how distant, time, weight, and other variable factors are used to calculate each rate. Like, really? Do you know how extensive that is? Would it not cost an operator from Cortland more money to run to Waterford or Dover? And should he not charge for that? Or do they have to sit here and calculate out the kilometers it takes to get to your wreck on a winter night and get you out of the snowbank? And if they don't have that rate card, do you send them back? Like, it's just such a huge list for these small businesses. This is red tape to death is what this is. I'm not voting for this.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Comments? Seeing none, those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor, and those opposed? So that is carried. Okay, thank you. And I think that's the last of our reports, and we're now going to, let's see, there's no motions, no notices of motions. So we've got some time for other business, and so start with staff. Lee?
Nothing this evening, thank you.
Okay, Marlene?
Nothing, thank you.
Bill?
Nothing tonight.
Stephanie? David? Clark? Oh, wow. Yakov? James? All right, Jim?
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I'm going to,
sorry.
thank you, you threw me there. I'm just going to highlight or encourage council and staff, and for the benefit of the public that may be viewing, this publication put out by Rotary International and more specifically the Rotary clubs within Norfolk County. First time that I'm aware of, and I think it's an excellent publication. So I just want to publicly acknowledge what they've done.
Yep, I've read it. I thought it was to agree with you. There's a lot of really good information in there. That's it. Oh, Councillor Geisens. And Councillor Height.
Looking for an update on my bridge. Is it going to be done by the weekend?
Lee.
Through the chairman to council, I have a phone call tomorrow morning with the engineers to make sure that we believe that it will be open for the weekend, and if not, we will put other arrangements in place. We're going to likely be hiring paid duty officers to ensure that there's appropriate traffic control, should we not be able to open the bridge.
Okay, now is that light, the warning light, going to sit there after this repair is done?
It will not. We will be open to 2 lanes, no load restriction, but a speed reduction.
Excellent, because I don't know that lady enjoys that red light and green light in her bedroom every single night with the cars piling up. And then I had another constituent talk to me about the Langton Community Center. And he was in Ward 1, of course, visiting. I guess there's accessibility issues there. There's a second floor.
Where?
In the community center in Langton.
No, there isn't.
Somewhere in Langton, one of our buildings. You can't get up there as a wheelchair?
Well, the problem is with the arena, sorry.
Oh, the arena.
It's the arena, and I just talked to somebody tonight about that some of the seniors are talking about not being able to get up to watch their kids, or whether it's figure skaters and hockey games and everything like that, and what they would like to see is either an elevator or something that will lift them up to the level somehow or other. And I know that the Hungarian Hall in Delhi has that, and it's just basically a seat, and you sit down and push the button, and it takes you up. So I don't know if there's anything. I know that a lot of them have them now. I know the here, the arena in Delhi, and Delhi has it, and the one here has it as well, so you can't do it in the bottom of or on the ground floor because it's only, I'm going to say, what, 6 feet or 4 feet wide, the hallway with the glass, and the glass is probably, if you're sitting down, it would be up to about here. So theoretically, they're looking for something that may work. So.
Bill, you want to comment on that?
Through the chair to both councillors. Yeah, something stands out that in future capital budgets, there is some money for a lift in Langton, but it caught me off guard and I'm not sure of the time or anything, but I will take it back to staff and Shelley's group as well to see how the accessibility list is and where we can fit that in and where it is.
I believe that money's set aside for the administration building because it has the basement as well and you can't get down there. It's not accessible either. So
The Langton?
for most of Langton, it's not accessible, and obviously the old people would like to get upstairs and get a coffee like the rest of people.
Councillor Height, I was just at the Accessibility Advisory Committee today, and on their priority list, Langton Administration Building was on there. Elevator budget of $175,000. So it is coming through the Accessibility Advisory Committee.
I'm talking about the arena. I know that one's on that list.
Oh, okay. And Councillor Sonnenberg, nothing today. Councillor Wells.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just have 2 items, and I see that these are both taken from the newspaper, Mr. Chair, not the Port Dover Maple Leaf either, but I see that Mr. Ford or Mayor Ford has taken the first steps. Not the mayor, I guess he's the premier. Premier Ford has taken the first steps in balancing his books. You know what he's going to do? He's going to have a hiring freeze. And when I read that, I said to myself, I hope his hiring freeze is much more successful than the hiring freeze we have here in Norfolk County. And my second item, Mr. Chair, I was surprised that the province, again, a newspaper article, that now is time when people are going to be paid severances for leaving the employee of the province to the tune of almost $9 million. That's all, Mr. Chair. And then we talk about we have no money.
Yes, thanks for bringing that good news to our attention, Councillor Wells. We always appreciate that. Councillor Brunton, then Mayor Luke.
Thank you, Councillor Black. I have just a couple quick questions. One, I noticed in their information package, Mr. Fields mentioned that they're doing the next phase up there at the Works Garage on Queensway regarding the contamination, and I wonder, will we be receiving a report on that in the not-too-distant future?
Through the chairman to council, yes, we'll be continuing to provide the updates to council, and when we have finalized reports, we'll be sure to make them available to council if they wish to read them.
Okay, and the other one I came across was they're looking at business cards, I guess, printed with Braille. And I guess my question on that, is that mandatory or is that just something we thought would be a good idea?
Is that Yakov? Would that be you, or who could respond to that?
I don't know enough from a legislative perspective whether something like that is mandatory, but I can certainly tell you from a customer service and delivery perspective and ensuring that we are able to deliver services and communicate with individuals with all sorts of disabilities and are able to reach out with them and provide them with the methodologies that they're able to contact us when they're provided with those business cards. And so it's as much as an outreach piece as much as a customer service initiative, and to be reflective of the fact that a modern municipality should consider the vast variety of the citizens and the needs that they have.
Well, I guess my question is, I know we just received new business cards, so is it something that will be phased in?
So that's kind of a separate offshoot project that basically involves identifying key figures and key individuals that are more likely to have contact with members of the public and targeting those cards at those individuals. It's not a massive sort of reprinting of the same cards or anything of that sort.
Thank you. And the other one I have here is I've had a lot of requests for alternate side parking, and I don't know, it seems to go to our bylaw department, and we always have, I don't know what the holdup is, but we have several streets in, at least in Simcoe, that are alternate side parking. And the reason behind that, in our urban areas, it was, I call it the urban residential, was allowed for street sweeping, it allowed for better snow plowing, things like that. So we always did that. And I know when the lots became smaller and the setbacks were shorter, that it became a problem more so on some of these streets for where people are parking on both sides. And I've had another one just the other day. So I'm just wondering why can't we have a lot of streets that are alternate side parking. Why can't we do more of them?
Okay, Lee?
Through the chairman to council, that's something that I believe that we need to look at holistically in Norfolk County and decide how, as development has changed, et cetera, it is something that we need to look at. There are benefits to both alternate side street parking and parking on both sides of the street. One of the things that we find as soon as we implement alternate side of the street parking, all we hear about is the speeding down the streets now. So it is something that staff have on our radar that we intend to bring forward at some point in the future, sort of a holistic report for the county with where certain types of parking should be permitted. Because one of the things that we're seeing now is the smaller frontages, so more driveway width and more vehicles. And so in older areas, they're parking on the street as well because their driveways and their parking spaces are all full. So it's something we need to look at holistically, not on a ad hoc item by item basis.
Well, is there a chance it might be moved up on the priority list with your department? I don't want to put the pressure on you, but I've had a lot of requests, and I'm sure some of the other councillors have dealt with that also.
If you get specific streets, get a list you can give Lee.
Dogwood, what's the one that we've had in the mail recently a lot of?
Certainly, we could.
List.
I would suggest that perhaps Councillor Height would have something to say about juggling priorities because he's got a bridge that's causing him a little bit of difficulty that's eating up a considerable amount of staff time. In addition, we've been working very hard at the directions that council has mandated to us. It is something that's in the works, but it's not at this point. It's hard to evaluate everything on a one-of basis at this point because we don't want to implement something and then go back and change it in 6 months to make it match the thinking for the rest of the community.
Well, would it be helpful if I gave a list of streets that people have contacted me to you?
Certainly, that'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mayor Luke.
Yes, I have 4 quick items, Mr. Chair. I'll be quick. On Saturday, I attended the Strawberry Fest in Delhi. I was there about 2 hours. They put on quite a show of the town with over 200 Mustang cars on display. The downtown is extremely busy, town-wide yard sales and lots of activities going on. It was just excellent. They did a great job. Then I moved on Saturday to Waterford, where the Waterford Heritage and Agricultural Museum had a large gathering where a donated cock-shut tractor was donated to the museum. There were people as far away in the society from Michigan. It was their 60th anniversary of the Cockshut Company. And the tractor was a test tractor, a prototype. It's been nicknamed the Old 506 in the 500 series. It's a 4-cylinder tractor that was sent down to Arizona to be tested in the heat and the sand of this desert. And it was working 24/7 for weeks to make sure it would be worth putting on the assembly line. It is valued as one of the most important tractors that exist in Canada. And it's in the condition that it came from Arizona. And I certainly thank the gentleman, his last name escapes me, Jim, from north of here, who made this generous donation to the collection. In your information package is a report that I attended the CIC meeting a couple weeks ago. There was an 8-page report on most of the events that I covered, workshops, tours, speakers. And so again, thank you for letting me attend. And finally, on a personal note, on behalf of council, I just want to thank Mr. Brunton and his lovely wife Donna for their hospitality. We would like to go back next Saturday again for supper, if we may. But anyhow, we'll leave that with you and Donna. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
That sounds like a good idea. Is that a motion, or? Okay, and lastly, I had a couple of things, and Mayor Luke, thank you for that report, that comprehensive FCM. I found that very informative, and I really appreciated reading a lot of the details that you gave there. I think it's clear to me that there's real value in being a member of FCM, and from your report, I actually had a couple of questions that I'd like to ask staff about. One is the cannabis, and I'm not sure if there's any staff member here that can answer that, but I know the legislation says that it will allow 4 plants to be grown in every residence, whether it's an apartment or a house. My question would be, even though that's allowed at the federal level, can we at the municipal level tweak that and say, no, we don't want that, and put a bylaw in place that says no? So I don't know if I could, if it's a question that can't be answered right now, maybe it could be answered later, because I don't want to put you on the spot for that. So if that's, it's of interest to me, because I can see that this is really going to create some problems with enforcement. Who enforces like 4 plants? And, then it's 5, then it's 6, and so on and so forth. So I can see that being a real municipal problem, and I wondered if that was something that we could address. If you can't answer it now, then maybe later. David, do you want to respond? Or?
I'm confident that we can't answer that now because the federal government can't answer that now.
Okay.
In the last 4 days, it's been punted from Senate back to the government, from the government back to the Senate, and anyway, it's a game of hot potato where no one seems to want to actually catch the potato. We are ultimately tracking this. Depending how the final legislation looks, there may or may not be provincial capacity to regulate around that. We just can't tell you right now. You will be receiving future reports on the laws. It becomes more clear. You'll get some from public, or in conjunction with public health, or from public health. You'll get some in conjunction with planning, or from planning, by law, et cetera. So we will give you a report on that, but the federal government can't tell you right now, so accordingly, neither can we.
Well, I can say that that's something that I am concerned about, and I'm sure there'd be many other people that would be concerned about that, just that one aspect of the growing of the 4 plants.
Well, Mr. Chair, if I may, the cannabis, the last morning, the Sunday morning, the breakfast session was a panel speaking on cannabis. There was a gentleman there on staff from the city of Calgary, which incidentally, he informed that they have spent $5 million in the city working on the cannabis legislation and how they're going to do things. Secondly, there was 2 from Quebec, one from Mount Royal area of Montreal, one from Quebec City, another staff member from one of the municipalities around Halifax. They did make the comment, one of them did, that they believe, and as the county manager says, it's being looked into, but they do believe that landlords will have the right and the ability to write in a lease agreement with the tenant. It's about the smoking of marijuana in the lease agreement. Again, I think we're just kind of got a lot of questions, but we really don't have some definitive. The other thing that I have learned is, Mr. Chair, on that topic, at 2 sessions now I've been to, is that other municipalities don't seem to have the issue we do with the smell issue. They seem to be either having the large medical factories that are so highly regulated, and with their HVA systems, their quality control, security, etc. They seem to be either dealing with that or they're gearing up dealing with this 4 plants of 1 meter height per household. I've never heard anybody talk much about odor. And I've asked many of these people at these sessions, are you having trouble with a neighborhood odor? And they know what I'm talking about. Of course, I guess if you're in a suburban Calgary or something, you're not likely to get it as much, say, as agriculture Norfolk. But anyhow, I don't want to say it's unique to this county, but it seems like that has consumed us a little bit and how we're going to deal with that. Thank you.
And thank you. And secondly, in your report, you talked about concrete roads. And I'd like to ask a question to Lee about concrete roads. I know Mayor Luke indicated that in that session that you went at, that it's cheaper, or they last longer, or there's so many positive aspects to having concrete versus asphalt, and I'm sure there's probably a downside to it, but I'm wondering if we are doing any concrete roads in Norfolk County, and if we're not, like, why not? I'm sure there's pros and cons, so.
Through the chairman to council, I would say that the top reason for why we do not have concrete roads in Norfolk County is we cannot afford them.
It's costly, but it lasts longer, so they say.
They certainly do, but there is an ongoing maintenance with concrete roads. Typically, the road base would be done in concrete, and you would see an asphalt wearing surface across the surface of it. You'll recall that the 407, when the 407 originally came out, they did all concrete road. And now what you see is they're converting it all to a concrete road with an asphalt wearing surface over top of that. So we're replacing the same amount of asphalt. We're actually fortunate down here. We have a lot of sand plains. We have a lot of naturally decent road bed. The concrete will bridge just about anything. So it's not necessarily the best bang for our dollar down here.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, appreciate that. And then lastly, Mayor Luke, I know you were attending the writing awards at the library, and I was there as well. And Tia Hofgraf, a locally homegrown singer, sang 3 songs and did a presentation on our own. I was very surprised at the number of well-written stories and, in particular, poems. And one, a young girl, 13 years old, got up and read a poem about the war, and it I thought was very moving, and you would think that it was written by somebody much older than her. So it was, and then we had our poet laureate there as well, and it was a good time, and just always blows me away to see the creative talent in Norfolk County, whether it's in sports and hockey or football or whatever it is, and dancing and singing and acting and writing. We seem to, I don't know, maybe it's the sand plains here that we're, the watering of all of our youth brings forth all this creativity. I don't know. Anyway, that's it, and we're going to go in camera now. And Stephanie, would you like to read the in-camera motion?
Sure, through the chair. I had it already here, and my computer decided to freeze up a bit. So if you bear with me, but I can read it out. It's that committee move into closed session at blank time to discuss matters pursuant to sections 239, 2A, C, D, and F of the Municipal Act 2001 SO C25 as amended, as the subject matter pertains to the security of the property of the municipality or local board, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, and employee negotiations and labor relations.
Okay, that's it. 7:50, and do I have a mover? Okay, Councillor Wells and Councillor Sonnenberg. Oh, that's Sonnenberg over there. All in favor? Okay, we're in camera. And any idea of the length of time? It'd be about 30 or 40 minutes, I would think. 45 minutes.
The computer just froze. Oh, really? Yeah. It was. No, it's okay. It was. I had it all ready to go and it decided to freeze on me. Yeah.
You mentioned it today, so
Yeah.
just
Yeah. No, we'd be up for it. I'll talk to Jill. She said that Todd might be taking care of it.
Yeah, okay.
Always a good time.
We'll chat.